listen to Zenbitchslap.com. We use a couple of words a lot. One of them is selfing. So selfing is very, very important. And selfing is the activities, the mental processes like memory, the interpretation of perception and thought, yeah? And what they're doing is they're run by a verb called the act of being identified as a self. The idea of a self in this view is a long-lasting, independent, separate entity, a thing, yeah? So the act of being identified as a self. Now, it would sound like, based on what we're used to, that there's the verb identified and then there's the noun self, but this is just the whole verb. There is no self. There is no long-lasting, independent, separate entity. Yeah? So it's a verb, complete verb. So it's the act of being identified as a self. And when it's delivering its goods, when it's convinced, let's say, what we are, yeah, that it's so, then the feeling of being a self that was produced after this verb, right? The act of being identified as self now is implied to be before it, yeah? So now we had it today at the last meeting in Encinitas. The person was sharing about, oh yes, I've been selfing all day and stuff like that. Now, the product of this verb is that feeling of being the one who's doing or not doing everything, yeah? So one view is, I've been selfing all day. There's that feeling of being the one that's been doing it, or selfing has been driving me crazy. Now you're the one that's being done to. That's the bondage of self right there. The bondage of self, the idea of an ego, that's to me is an objectification of selfing, yeah? Because if you really look at it, when people share about ego, they talk about I have an ego, and then they hope to talk about I lost an ego. What is that feeling that believes they had one and then lost one? That's the bondage of self. Yeah? That's the activity we're pinpointing. Because if you don't see it, you're going to be looking from it. Yeah? It's going to be a shadow that's going to follow you wherever you go in all your practices, because it has no reverence. There's no special practice that's 5,000 years old that it won't try to claim. It will claim everything it comes in contact with. That's its first movement. So here it is. It's the act of being identified as a self. Suddenly, when it's believed, the self is implied to be before. So you see it. So let's say conscious contact is what's happening right now. This consciousness is moving through 5 gates, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, yes? And it's in contact with seeming things, all right? Okay. Now the mental process arises after the conscious contact, but when it arises, it will presuppose you, it will imply the you, it will assume the you is the one that's conscious. Yeah? Do you see it? So there's conscious contact. If there was just a clear awareness of conscious contact, you would have such an immunity to all the bullshit that seems to drive us crazy. Yeah? Just knowing that baseline, the way the mental state gets around that, it can't get rid of consciousness, can't get rid of the event, but it can claim it. So it uses the consciousness now to imply it's you that's conscious. And then what happens? An impossibility suddenly becomes incredibly possible. You can be unconscious. And I guarantee you, living in that interpretation, you're probably going to be way more on the side of thinking yourself to be unconscious than you will be on thinking yourself to be conscious. Yes? That's the heist. That's the warning. Real spiritual information, if you want to call it spiritual, are warnings. They're warning you. Yeah? They're warning you of some basic pitfalls that most of us never see, but we end up looking from all the time. Yeah? To a great master like Ramana Maharshi, a lot of the people that wrote about stuff he said, they would talk about this as the problem. The, meaning this is the big one in a sense. This sense, this activity of a presupposing, not just supposing, not just assuming, but when it's assumed, it presupposes that you were somewhere that you're not. Yeah, that's the incredible beauty of it. Because we believe time goes from here to then and then to the future. But the mental state doesn't play that game. In the mental state, what comes after can be implied to be before. What comes after is implied to be before. So what becomes apparent after conscious contact, a thought about you arises. But when you believe that thought, it presupposes itself to be before the conscious contact. Just like, it's like the thinking. It does the exact same thing. It's a thought. The idea of being a self is a thought. But that thought implies to itself that it's above all other thoughts by calling itself the thinker. And you try to think yourself out of the thinker. Good freaking luck. That's a field day for it. All it wants is you to think about it. So the main movement, you'll see it. I mean, we're awake. We can see it. We're all inherently awake right now. I mean, it's obvious. Is the seeing that's happening seem to have any volition concerning you? If your eyes are open in a certain direction, you're going to see whatever comes through that, that space, yeah? There's no volition in it, and there's no discrimination in it. The discrimination and the supposed volition comes after. It doesn't happen here. And is there any effort and thought being demonstrated to see? Am I really going to seeing classes every day and hearing classes? I mean, you may have a hard time hearing if your ears are bad, but that which is hearing doesn't go bad. It's not having a hard time hearing. You would like it to shut down quite a lot when you're trying to sleep, but it's fucking on, and whatever is apparent that it can pick up, it picks up. There's no volition or thought or effort involved in it whatsoever. What's that but awakeness? Where would that awakeness be? Now, here. When? Now. And any other time, it would be what? Here, now. So in a sense, it's always available at all times, right where you are, and there's no requirement to meet it other than the ones you believe. When you set up, hurdles, you're going to start the race. That's how it goes. Do you know what I mean? It's like the amusement park, all the lights are off and all the rides are shut down, but as soon as you arrive, they all go on. You don't see your role in things. You play a huge role here. You're the dreaming of everything. Not you as this action-seeming figure, but of what we are, the mind, big M mind. So these warnings are sort of like, if spirituality could be smoked and it was in a cigarette pack, it would be a warning like on the side of the pack, or like in New Age books, it should be on the author's page, yeah? You are, what you're looking for is what's looking. I would imagine the book sales would go down dramatically, because the whole thing about reading about shit is totally based on the other contrary idea, which is not a fact, that you are not what is looking, yeah? You're busily being something looking for that what's looking. And so now what you are becomes objectified and you want to search for it. How's it working? I never was the greatest spiritual seeker. I wasn't. So there's room for doubt. It may have been me. Maybe if I would have done more, maybe if I would have just sat longer on that meditation, maybe one more lemon cayenne drink, my 45th day of fasting, just maybe, but one thing I know for sure, one category, I completely fulfilled that category, and that was drug addiction. I would match my devotion to drugs with any spiritual devotee in the history of spirituality. The little monkey guy, Hanuman, I was right up there with him. I loved fucking cocaine. I did anything for it. I would give everything I had and anything you had I could get for it. I worshipped it. And you know what? What I ran into completely is you cannot transcend an imaginary place. Now, I don't need to do it in the spiritual realm because it's the exact same event. Yeah? Me trying to get out of some place I'm not in. It's impossible to escape from an imaginary place. This place isn't real unless you see it as real. This is the dilemma. What happens with self-centeredness, when you're confronted with a failed system, you'll blame yourself for it. You don't see it's a failed system. The GPS that we're living our life by is flawed. Its maps are super old. It never delivers the goods. You punch in, I'd like to be happy, joyous, and free. You end up in jail that night. Yeah? And yet we keep going back to it because we call it us. We're identified as it. We can't imagine. The only way we can imagine freedom is as that which we're not, when the freedom is from that. And the freedom is inherent. It's always available at all times because there is not that to be free from. The freedom is realizing it's not that. And it doesn't take any time, and it actually doesn't go anywhere. It's just your belief that you go somewhere. When the mind moves, the mental state moves, you think it implies that you're moving. It doesn't. You have never moved an inch from where you are, ever. Where's the sky going to go? How many things have moved through the sky? How many things have appeared in the sky? And not one of them ever left a mark on the sky. Not one. That's what mind is like, big M mind. That's what's looking out of our eyes right now. We just don't think so. If you see what you're not, it's the seeing of what you're not is what you are. Humbly, believe me or not, this is just an invitation. But this is all verbing. There was never a starting point, nor is there an end point. There's no place where you enter it. You've never left it. Everything is verbing. There's no nouns to be found. Everything is verbing. Everything is seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. It's a verb, yeah? Everything is happening, therefore, in fact, nothing ever happened. Because it's always in the process of happening. That's what it's like. That's what mind is like in movement. The mental state cannot stand that idea. It wants to put nouns in there. So when you see the selfing, when you see it, and you've been seeing it all day, you just call it you. You've been watching this activity forever, and you follow it intently because you think it's about you. If you could see it as other, there'd be relief from it. It's like, to me, a foreign installment or a parasitical movement. Whatever word or saying that could trigger you seeing it as other is what works, because the root situation is there's an act of being identified as that. Yeah? It cannot make it happen or come to pass, but it can seem to be so. It can appear to what is so, which is us, that it's true, and therefore it seems real. Yeah? The only audience in this movie is us. We're the only audience. How can false evidence appear real unless it appeared real to what's real? How could something false get any sense of reality unless it was lent reality from reality? That's us. the Course would say beautifully, you know the Course in Miracles? You ever hear of it? Yeah? You know, you and I don't like the noun, so I say you and I are the dreaming of this dream. We forget that we're dreaming. That's an impossibility. It can only reach a level of seemingly, yeah? It can only appear to what's real that it forgot, but it didn't forget, yes? That which is dreaming isn't forgetting it's dreaming. It can seem to forget that it's dreaming. That's the engine of the dreaming. That which is real seems to forget it's real and now takes upon the dreaming as reality. Yes? So you and I are the dreaming of the dream. We forget that we're dreaming. And in that state, we suddenly, now, and how do we forget that we're dreaming? In my view, it's the act of being identified as the dreamt. Yeah? So we now take ourselves to be an object in the dream. So in this condition, what happens? Suddenly, everything I'm dreaming now has the power to affect me as the dreamt. Where before, in my state, in my inherent state, I have total invulnerability, suddenly I seem to become vulnerable. Yeah? Through the identification with the dreamt. That's what's happening every day. We're forgetting that we're the dreaming by being identified as the dreamt, and suddenly thoughts that we think we're having seem to have the ability to have us. Yeah? Feelings that we think we're having, suddenly those feelings can have us. One thought can ruin a whole freaking Hawaii vacation. Suddenly it has a huge amount of power to affect us. Yet in our inherent state, we're invulnerable to it. It's mind-boggling. So I found in spirituality, I did a lot of stuff. I can't match with the great ones. I went to retreats, did the, typical India, did that stuff, but I was quite earnest and sincere. And after years of doing it, and nothing actually really changing, I had a lot of experiences, but nothing radically shifted. I came upon or heard this message, and it was sort of like someone pulled my pants down, my spiritual pants. And for some reason, I didn't lift up and pull them back up, or lift them, down, and something happened to me. First of all, I felt a huge sense of disappointment because I had invested so much in this new identity of being a spiritual seeker. And suddenly, like, the rug was pulled out without much foreknowledge. It just was, I thought, quite rude awakening. It just pulled it out. And it was like a template. I had a whole story written, and this template of this presupposing of a non-existent thing, wanting to get salvation for a non-existent thing, suddenly went down, and all of my huge history filling 800 chalkboards all condensed and fit right underneath this template. It now had explained years of freaking activity. This one statement. It was as clear can be. Yeah? That's exactly what had been happening. There was an identification as a non-existent thing, and I had been feverishly working to get salvation for the non-existent thing. It was mind-boggling. It erased. If I had to get it, if I had to get trucks to move it, I would have thought it would have taken days. But it was like zip, no time at all. The whole weight of it all just got erased. And it was like this unspoken yes. Just something I knew prior to all knowing, yeah? I can't put my finger on it. I didn't need to put my finger on it. It was just like this yes, unspoken yes, and it's been reverberating ever since. And I'm telling you, it's been quite a while now, and I can look at it from here in this seeming story of time, and it's the last answer, because I haven't looked for another answer since. And I'm telling you, there's no better answer than the last answer, because it puts out all the need for any further answers. And it's been put to the test, and I've lived a life as an action figure, facing a lot of terrain and geography that I would have loved to avoid it, and all I can say is I've been able to travel lighter over all that geography. Hasn't changed everything, but it allowed a lightness to become the pervading condition instead of agitation. Yeah? With no thought or effort on my part. And what the seeing does, it begets more seeing. Yeah? What the entertaining of something that's true, because right now, everyone in this room is a huge miracle worker. You know, there's a story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. But in that case, Lazarus was once alive. We're making shit out of nothing all fucking day. We're the mental state's worrying about an imaginary future and producing an effect now. That's fucking power. It's got nothing to work with. There is no next week. There really isn't. There is no 5 years from now. But it goes, plants its little seeds, and somehow it imagines a crop, and you feel it now. And I watch it. I watch it in tons of social settings or these types of meetings where people are here, but they're not responding to what's happening here. They're in a complete reaction to what's happening. And if you're having a bad day, it's never based on the day you're in. It's based on last week or next week. To me, that's a sure tell sign that you're living an interpretation. That your living has been misdirected or commandeered, and you're getting back an interpretation that's sorely lacking in a sense of onness. The hope is you will be on, or you have nostalgic stories about when you once were on, but you somehow are not on now. And it demands that you've got to either do something or get something to be right where you already are. It's one of the greatest heists of all time. And it's going on right underneath our nose all freaking day. It's like you wake up, you're not at square 0 on the game board, you're at square 3. And square 3 gives you a totally different view of the game board than square 0 does. And then the double whammy is you'll try to turn around at square 3 and suddenly make square 0 a destination when you've never left square 0. The idea of square 3 is an appearance in square 0. The idea of square 53 is an appearance in square 0. The movement 74 is an appearance in square 0. There's nothing other than square 0. You've never gone anywhere. You've never gone far enough to merit looking for it. Huang Po warning. Hey bro, hey sister, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha. You can't use light to seek light. You can't use big M mind to seek mind. You can try it for eons and it's not going to work. If that ain't a warning, I don't know what is. He's attempting to save us a lot of freaking time. Because it's an insane idea that if you and I are the Buddha, what in hell could motivate the Buddha to start looking for the Buddha? I would imagine the only thing that could possibly do that would be being identified as something other than the Buddha. And then suddenly what you are becomes a goal that what you're not wants to start to seek. And it's a perfect way of disguising the ever-present Buddhahood, and the best way is to be looking for the Buddhahood. That can go on for fucking ever. Like someone said that today. What happens if you try to get out of an imaginary place? How long could that go on? Forever. Because how are you going to escape from an imaginary place? Your escape is reinforcing the idea that it's real. So Ramana says this beautiful thing, the presupposing, and then he goes, this is the double whammy. This is like the killer hold. Yeah? This is the killer hold. This is it. This is when you better just yell out no mas. So, all right. There's the presupposing of the non-existent thing. Well, that's okay. But then there's going to be the non-existent thing suddenly taken to be the existent thing is going to want to get salvation for itself. Yeah? And it says, if your spiritual practices themselves are reinforcing the non-existent thing. Listen to this, it's beautiful, it'll save you a lot of time. If the spiritual practices themselves are reinforcing the non-existent thing, how can they destroy it? So how can what is being used to give life to an imaginary thing destroy the imaginary thing? And if the shoe fits, wear it. It's wonderful. Because something is going to shift. When you see the futility, the true futility of looking for what you already are, things are not going to stay the same. They're not. There's going to be plate tectonic little movements are going to occur. And a lot of what you call you is going to go down into the pit, so to speak. And there's going to be an economization, a paring down, and you'll travel later. First of all, you will not take yourself so seriously. You will not be trying to get into the moment because you realize you can't be out of a moment. You will not be trying to get out of self because you realize you can never be in self. Yeah, this is a bizarro world we're living in most cases. We're trying to get out of what we can't be in. We're trying to get into what we can't be out of. Have you ever been out of any moment you've been in? Have you ever escaped from here and now? Ever? With all the thinking about there and then, when you arrive at there and then, what is it, here and now? Do you think there's really a possibility of a there and then? That here and now is that small, that there could be a there and then? There and then is within here and now. It's all made up. You never escaped here because it's not a here to escape from. We're dreaming. Yeah? We're in the midst of dreaming. This will be like a painting that's not applied to the canvas, but bleeds out into the canvas. You will not be trying to know what you are or experience what you are, because the only possibility that's available is being what you are. And after a while, you'll see that you've always and always will be being what you are. Your head just doesn't think so. It really doesn't. It thinks this doesn't mean it. Oh, if you did this, you're exiled. And it's all baloney. It's all playing God. It's on and on and on and on. It hasn't changed a damn fucking thing. Ever. We go to sleep every night and it all gets erased like an Etch-a-Sketch thing, doesn't it? The most pressing issue after you go to sleep, is it pressing? It seems to arise when you wake up. You know, it's like when I did an inventory in AA, we do inventories, and so I looked at my relationships and I saw like 15 relationships I looked at, saw what my role of them was in. And after looking at all 15, and they could have been called failed relationships, I saw there was only one constant in all of them, and that was me, yes? I didn't meet crazy 15 women. I was the crazy element. Oops, oh yeah, really. You go back. Most of my life since I was 6, if you want to call it that, was trying to make unreal what seemed so real to me. You know, like my grandmother and my father died when I was 9. My grandmother lived with us. And that sort of was a crushing situation, because I had a lot of love out there, and then the objects that it was directed at were gone. I had no idea about death at that point. And so I sucked back in, and I started to take counsel from my head from then on, quite a lot. And my head's main job was to try to make all this real shit as unreal as possible. So I started reading fantasy, science fiction, Edgar Allan Poe, this and that, got into drugs, then had to go into spirituality, then back to drugs, then spirituality again, and basically the whole life was about making shit that seems so real unreal. But something one day was revealed to me that my trying to make things that are unreal, make them as real can be. So my strategy was ass backwards. So I was trying to busily make shit I thought was real unreal, but my trying to make them unreal all day made them as real could be. Sort of like, I didn't want to be a fraud, so I felt like one thousands of times. And when that was a little corrected, which it was, all that shit that I had been working so hard to keep away from me finally landed. And what happened is it was allowed to be as real as it wanted to be, and it showed itself as unreal. As long as I was trying to make it unreal, it was as real as it could be. When I let it be as real as it wanted to be, I saw it as unreal. That's exactly what's happening. Yeah. The mental state produces attention. It lives in agitation. It produces something. And then you want to get away, and the getting away is more in it than being in it. Trying to get out of self is one of the highest forms of quote-unquote being in self. So what's one to do? Let it fucking hit you. Let it hit you. If these statements, you can't use the Buddha, if those hit you, don't put a period on it. Let the mind get it. And maybe the first reactions from the mental state will be very uncomfortable, but the opening up will be incredible for you, because the gig will start to be fucking over. Yes? Then blue will be blue and red will be red. You won't have metaphysical questions. You'll have questions about, where did I leave my keys? You're not going to have you're going to lose so much interest in what they call spirituality here. You'll lose total interest in most of it. You'll lose interest in the need to be liberated, because what needs to be liberated ain't you. Yeah? You lose totally interest in being freed from bondage, because you are now resting in the freedom that's prior to bondage, not the freedom that comes after bondage, the freedom that's prior to bondage. And from the solution, the problem is seen as an intact activity that you're complicit with. As Jesus says, as you believe, so it is. That's exactly what's happening. And I don't mean the surface beliefs. I mean an underlying belief that formulate you, that are your planks, your platforms. Those are what has the real say here. What you think you believe is very shallow. The beliefs are there, and you can know the tree by the fruits. You can check it out, because you're going to be getting effects. So when this started to dawn on me, I saw the problem from the solution. And from the solution, it's an activity. It can only reach, humbly, it can only seem to be real to what's real. Yeah? It can only reach a level of appearing to be true to what's true. It can never become what it's implying it is. Never. You can outweigh anything here. Everything here is going to run out before you ever do. That's the invitation. We have tons of repetition on the website. Listen to it, and you'll find new ways of listening. It's not to be accompanied with thought, though thoughts will surround it. But when thoughts, see, this is what happens. The system has a lot of fail-safe mechanisms. So here you go. You try to get out of self, let's say, but as the self. Yeah? So you get more locked into the system while you try to escape the system. So then you have to see, how is this occurring? And how it's occurring is this. There is a footprint of the parasite you can see in your own life. And it's the word my. Yeah? So a thought is a thought, But when it's your thought, it has an incredible amount of more heaviness. Yeah? It's like we used to use this thing, put money up there, relationships and health, and everyone would react to those words by the condition they think they're in, or actually usually the condition they're believing they will be maybe later. So, all right, I'm going to change the whole word without changing the word at all. All right, just by putting my in front of it, my money. So I can look at everyone here, and I really wish you to have a lot of money, but I don't want you to have any of my money. It's the same money, but the whole attitude is different, yeah? The my is it. That's the juice of the act of being identified as a self. That's what uses everything that comes after it, which is thoughts, feelings, and actions, to imply the thinker, the doer, and the feeler. That's the bondage of self. It's an activity. It never happened, but it seems to happen. It's never happened, ever. It's impossible. But it can sure seem to happen. If you're believing it, it seems to be fucking pretty so. Yeah? This message hopefully will shake it up a little. And instead of, see, because this isn't to you. I'm not talking to you. I've tried that before. It goes nowhere. This fucking goes nowhere. This message is aimed at over your head. Yeah? I'm talking to mind about you. To talk to you about mind is pointless. Yeah? But to talk to mind about you, if mind just goes, ooh, maybe I'm not that, that's it. And so the mental state is like the Death Star. You remember Star Wars? And they'd have the fighter pilots, the rebel fighter pilots, but there'd be thousands of things shooting at them. So I know the mental state is like the 1,000-armed Buddha with mitts. And all the messages that are thrown out, it's very quick to catch them. And this is what usually happens with the old example of the sheep and the lion. Let's say a lion is identified as being a sheep, yes? Just fell into this idea. He's got a lot of sheep friends and married a sheep wife. So he's believing it, and he's not that satisfied. You know, he's got his hair curled and he's trying to chew cud and bah. But it's not working for him. All the other sheep look happy, so he keeps at it. And then one day, a lion comes in and passes on the message, hey, you're a lion. And you would think that would be great. It would take a second for the lion to get that it's a lion. Not even a second. It's already a lion, right? It just needs a little short reminder. Hey, lion, you're a lion. All right, beautiful. See, but what's going to catch the message of your lion is the sheep programming, yeah? And it's going to catch it, and when it catches it, it's going to neuter it. It's going to make it into, I can become like a lion. That's not the message, yeah? So then you go and hear the message again, and it resonates for you, and here it comes. You're a lion, and you are a lion. So there's not much of a problem. You're a lion, you're a lion, you're a lion. But when it hits this configuration, you're identified as a sheep. So you hear it as, I can become like a lion. That's the neutering of the message. So the lion never gets the direct hit that it's a lion, because the myth that's raising to get the message and doing it quite quickly is the mental state, and the mental state casts you as a sheep. So the biggest deterrent is how you're hearing the message. It's not the message, it's what's hearing the message. So this is sort of like spiritual sperm, yeah? You got to have 1,000 of them, hopefully, to get to the egg. So let's say the big mind is like the egg, and we're sending thousands of sperms, and maybe one gets through, and it hits the egg, and it conceives this idea. And the idea is, I'm not that. It suddenly starts, instead of looking from the being the sheep, it sees the identification as a sheep. Yeah? And seeing the identification as a sheep, as a verb, what does it become obvious? What becomes obvious? It's a lion. So it's signed up for those 3 months of roaring lessons. It cancels those immediately. Fuck the chewing the cud. It's going to eat one of those sheep today. Yeah? It doesn't have to work at being a lion. It's always been a lion. It was just really had to work on trying to become like a lion when it was identified as a sheep. That's it. That's the whole scripture. Because if that's not seen, every other step is going to be off. Because you're going to be meditating, and you're not going to realize the mental state is going to use the meditation to imply the meditator. So now you'll become another form of self. You'll become a spiritual self, which is a lot slimier than an addict self. Because really, you go to these meetings, when have you seen something like this happen? All right, you've had enough of these salsa. Come on. You're going to a program, 28-day program. Put down the book. No more CDs, nothing. Come on. No, there's no interventions. The spiritual seeking goes on and fucking on and fucking on. And some people must be ready to go off because they're going, how did this guy fucking get it? I've gone to more meetings than him. I was right with Emoji or someone. You know, we're pissed as hell because nothing's fucking happening. Because we're waiting to get it. We want to be there to get it. I want to be there to experience my own absence. It's not going to fucking happen. It's losing interest in you. That's the freedom. Yes. Not to be so interested in you that you want to get salvation for it, but the loss of interest in it, you'll be keen on, you already are in salvation from it. There's no other step. When you see what you're not, that's what you are. There's not a seeing of when you're not, then you have to pivot to start looking for what you are. That would be the looking from what you're not. There's a seeing of what you're not, and that's what you are. It takes no time to happen because it's always happening. Right now, we've been on the road, we've done 2 talks. I'm totally flipped out as an action figure. I feel like I'm in a state of electrocution. It doesn't fucking matter. Every feeling that I had might hurt me, I never feel during talks. Everything that seems so pressing is totally dismissed. And you know what? After years of it happening, it's obvious it was never even happening. How could it be forgotten so quickly? How could something that was real be forgotten so quickly? Know how? When what is real loses interest in it. That's how. So if you can watch it arise, if you can see the selfing, it's going to imply sooner or later that you must not be the selfing if you can see it. Yeah? If you see it, how can you be it? Yes. So now suddenly, instead of trying to get that which is in front of the camera, the body, to find out some mythical, magical way to get behind the camera, which is no thing, and be the only thing that's ever reached no thing, and still kept its thingness. You'll realize that what's before the camera is relegated to be before the camera. Yeah? And by seeing you're not that which is before the camera, suddenly you get the hit that you are that which is behind the camera. Not that you finally arrived at what's behind the camera. Not that you are the chosen one to get behind the camera, but you've always been behind the camera. Not for 1 second have you ever not been behind the camera. It's sort of like this. Take a huge camera, 360-degree vision, incredible high-definition lenses, unbelievable, yes? And then there's a brownie. Remember those brownies? They were like $15 and they had like a plastic lens, usually like you basically just pointed and hoped a picture would be taken. You couldn't see anything through it. It's like a little box. And there's a brownie camera, which has a very small aperture with a yellow tint, yeah? But it still can take pictures. So this huge camera's walking around and says, hey, what's this? And it looks through this brownie camera, and while looking through the brownie camera, it becomes identified as the brownie camera. Yeah? And it seemingly forgets it's the huge camera. And now suddenly, its huge capacity to have HD and everything is suddenly funneled into this very small point of view called self-centeredness. Now it's looking at life down this little tunnel vision, and everything is seen as how it pertains to it as the brownie. Not as what it is, but as the brownie camera. Okay? What happens? What happens? Well, let's say it thinks it hears a message as the brownie camera, but the message that the brownie camera thinks it's hearing is about you're not the brownie camera. And let's say it hears the message enough that one of those messages gets through the brownie camera defenses and hits the larger camera. How long will it take for the larger camera to realize it's not the brownie camera? No time whatsoever, because it's never been the brownie camera. And is it going to be a huge, arduous pulling it apart from the brownie camera? No. It's just going to go. It didn't lose its capacity. It didn't lose its HD. It didn't lose anything. It was, all of it was being funneled through this apparatus, this device that was severely limiting its capacity, its ability. It wasn't gone, it never got lost, it just wasn't being entertained because we were busily entertaining, I'm a fucking brownie. So open up, the larger camera gets, and now what happens? Now it's seeing the brownie instead of looking from the brownie. It's seeing it. It sees it now. And it's quite clear when it's seeing the brownie, it's not the brownie. It doesn't need a name. It is what it is, but it's damn sure it ain't that. Yeah? That's the beingness. You don't need to know what you are. The only possibility we have is to be what we are. And we're being what we are at all times, but we just don't think so. Because our attention is on the gyrations of the puppet, not the hand that's animating it. You can blame Punch and Judy for hitting each other, but did they really hit each other? Or was it the hands? We're wearing a glove, and we think it's the hand, so we never entertain we can pull out the hand. We don't. We live our life thinking we're the glove, and we're getting a glove's interpretation of this event. And to me, it's an interpretation. Are you going to try to refine the glove? If it's a crude, rough glove, it's going to be a crude, rough glove. How are you going to refine it? You know? You can't turn water into oil. But what would happen if you heard a message? Hey, bro, you may not be that glove. What? Suddenly a possibility would arise. Hey, I can pull this hand out. And then what would have happened? You've realized the hand has really always been out. It only seemed to be in the glove. It was never in the glove. Hallelujah. This is the greatest fucking news because there's nothing to do and yet you'll do tons of shit. But the relief that there's nothing to do while you're doing tons of shit is great. It's fucking great. Yes? It's like better than 50 Thai massages. You just chill out. I mean in a deep way, or what they call the abidance in the truth. There's an abidance in the truth, yeah? There's an aspect of your interest and attention that's not being sent to the store by the mental state all day. It's here, resting, like almost like paused, and that's the presence you feel. It's your own energy, it's your vibration. The appropriate responses rest there, yeah? And then when there's a movement and you see it as not you, the movement has no ability to convince you that you've moved. Yes? There'll be plenty of shooting stars in the mental state, but none of them can move or shake what you are. None. No way. You've never moved from what you are. There's been tons of movements in what you are, but you as what you are has never moved. This is nice to have at least a modicum of understanding, and it will lead to hopefully something else, which is, this is a talking about a view, but the vision is the key. And the vision is inherent. View is an understanding. The understanding does not produce a vision, but it can allow the space for the vision to become more obvious. Yeah? Well, I think that's it for tonight. Any questions? I please no. I could go on forever. I lost all sense of whatever hours ago. I lost it down near Pompano Beach or something. I don't know what happened. So yeah.
Can there still be a feeling of growth?
Of course, there's a feeling of growth.
Even though it seems to all like never move.
Yes, for sure. Because we're in a dream of time. So something that is can seem to grow on you. Yeah? Yeah. It's some of it's really beautiful, man. What would happen if there was no time? Then flowers would always be open, yeah? But it's beautiful to watch a flower like an orchid. You see a little bud, and maybe months before it starts to open, and it's a long process. It's a beautiful stretching out of beauty, isn't it? I love when time plays like that. It's beautiful to see something, you know, grow, and it's gorgeous. So I think the dreaming is incredible.
What about when the flower fades and loses its beauty and starts to die and dies?
That's part of this dualistic event, babe. You can't have only one side of a coin. It's always going to have two sides, no matter how many times you cut it. It's the way it goes here. Yeah.
So will we always get the interpreted version of reality, or will we ever get an uninterpreted? Will we ever get the real version and not an interpreted version?
Well, every night you go to sleep, in deep sleep, yeah. But you don't get it, you are it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You get a break every day, don't you? The thing that would love to be there in deep sleep isn't there. That sense of self. It's like an incredible rest stop every day. Yeah? Isn't it? Yeah. But of course the head is going to do what it does. It's a process. But it will get weaker, obviously, because it drives its energy source is your interest. Yeah. When that starts to get removed, it only has so much momentum, and it loses sort of power. So that, in other words, it used to fuel, let's say, a 120 watt bulb, and now it can only light up a 60 watt bulb. So that you're hearing it but not listening to it. Yes. So that it's like its pulse is weaker, much weaker. And then a lot of times your head just arises in thought when it's needed, like, where's that bolt and where's the nut? And then when the chore is done, it recedes. Yeah. Yeah, you just lose interest in it. The whole difference is in hearing and listening. See, when you take it to be you, the thoughts about you, you're going to listen. There's a listening, there's an intention there. When you see it's not you, you just hear the thoughts. They're different. The thought cannot compel an action. Your belief in the thought can compel an action. Yeah? The thought is just, it's like a tease. It's trying to sort of move this body to action. Because in a weird way, it's a way a thought extends its life, is by producing an effect. Yeah? So a thought, so many million of them are all going around, but some have enough rocket that they push into an action, yeah? And then that action has a reaction, and you're sort of tattooed as the body, you know, as the person with that. So like, you know, I always use the example of, you know, I had this girlfriend 6 years, and maybe 50 times I thought I hate this girl, you know, hate her. But I never said it, yeah? So everything just went the way it went. But one night, it was, you know, the lawyers up there were having a good case, and I said, but I hate you, you know? And you know what? I went out and forgot that I said that in about an hour, but she never forgot it, yeah? And then after she called up all her friends, they never forgot it. So that one thought getting out had a pretty long-lasting henna tattoo on the action figure. So this is sort of the danger, because in a way we're like a membrane that's keeping what's not appearing, yeah, and bringing it into appearance, yeah. A lot of shit can come through us, you know what I mean? A lot of cruelty, a lot of beauty, like that, a lot of stuff. Everything is just potentially available, but we're what brings it in, yeah. And a lot of thoughts, you ever hear them? They're really working at convincing somebody, yeah? And they want to lead you to a place called fuck it. Because if they lead you to fuck it, then you're apt to do almost anything. And they all suggest the things to do. Oh, fuck it, get loaded, have a drink. And then once you drink, now you're on the flypaper of consequences. And it's different, you know, ever try to move off a flypaper, the next move is you get stuck, you know? You can't seem to get out. It's like when you get arrested, the bureaucracy, that 5-minute high that you got arrested over has produced a 3-year effect. Your analysis tests, court cases, fucking probation, and you're fucking unbelievable, yeah? So to me, it's like when you look at cement and grass is trying to grow, everything's trying to manifest. There's just tons of oomph. And we are a big interface. And the thought system can't get out here, can't get out. It has to get out through us, yeah? It's like alcoholism can't drink. It has to convince you to drink, yeah? It's like, you ever see, oh, opens me up to parasites. Parasites are fucking unbelievable. I've been interested in this type idea, so a lot of people send me research about parasites. The newest research I got was about this, they call it toxo, it's like a nickname for it. It's a parasite that's in most mammals, it's in humans, about 20% of humans have it, mostly in the brain, and it's just dormant there, yeah? Just dormant, waiting for an opportunity. And it has, you think you're having a hard time getting a date? Fucking these parasites, all they want to do is reproduce, and their degree of difficulty is fucking unbelievable. This thing, it can only produce in the stomach of a cat. That's the only place it can reproduce. This parasite that's in tons of different animals, it has to get into a cat's stomach, and it doesn't have Uber or anything, and there's no legs. It's in some other thing body. How the hell is it going to succeed? Yeah? How the hell is it going to get to that fucking cat's stomach? But that's just imperative. So it's in a lot of rat and mice. And what it does is, it jacks into the little rat brain, and it tells the rat, when you see a cat, run right up to it. Just sort of bring up the knife and fork and roll over, and just give yourself to that cat. Now you would think the biggest instinct all animals have is self-preservation. The parasite overrules that like that. You don't think it's happening to us? It's fucking happening to us. So it overrules it, so when they see a cat, they run up to it. The cat eats it, the fucking toxo arrives, it produces more of itself. This is what's happening. You don't think alcoholism is like a parasite? You don't think anger, greed, these things aren't like parasites? They're dying to express, they got to express through us. We're the interface. If not, they're just potentiality. They're just there, possibly, in like potential form. We bring them through life. And how do they get ushered into an action? Usually through thoughts. If you have no immunity to thoughts, you're not going to have immunity to certain actions, and those actions may set the rest of your life up here. I know a guy in San Quentin that killed somebody in a blackout. He cannot even think about the night it happened. He has no memory of it, yet that event is now affecting him as an action figure the rest of his life. He's never getting out of jail. This is it. We are a power. You know, there's sunlight in the day, it's all nice. Today was beautiful, right? If they magnified some of that sunlight, it would incinerate you. Yeah? As long as it's dispersed, it's really great. It allows you to see far, everything like that. That's mind-like, yeah? When mind is focused by the mental state on an object, the body, and you're all that you fucking think about, it's gonna produce weird mutations. You know what I mean? It's gonna grow arthritically. It's gonna be weird shit happening because there's just way too much attention going to a non-existent thing. This isn't about concentration and focus, it's dispersal. You see a whole lot more when you're unfocused than when you're focusing. You do. This is like relaxed awareness. It is not fucking strenuous awareness. You're walking around and you're awake to being awake. It's not a big freaking deal. That's just a fact. You can only seem to be asleep to it, or you can seem to be awake to it. That's the deal. But it never changes the awakeness. You're awake. You can seem to be with it. You may travel lighter, or you may seem to be asleep to it, and then you'll be traveling heavy. You'll be on a consequential level. You always find yourself in the hallway of shitting fans, and you don't realize the hallway of shitting fans only appears when you go in it. It does. The whole thing gets triggered when you enter.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're saying thoughts are parasites?
No, I'm saying there's a parasitical movement and thoughts are being used to further that movement, yes. The thoughts aren't parasites, but they're being used, yes.
So I had an image of some of my thoughts as parasites. Because they keep coming back and they live dormant until they're activated.
Yeah, you can look at it that way. However you image it, because images go way past words. If you can picture something as other, then the possibilities that weren't available when you're calling it you become available. And the one that was available to me immediately is I can be free from it.
I was just learning how to get these parasitical thoughts out of my head and into my cat's stomach.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Mouth to mouth. Are you willing to do that? Go ahead. That's how it goes.
This is my question.
Go right in there. And see, that thing that wants to do that is a demonstration of the selfing. You were saying it jokingly, but that urge, that's the selfing. That the one that wants to get out of something that it's not in, or get into something that it's not out of. That's selfing. You don't say anything what you are. Or it's constantly saying something that you hear as silence, basically. Yeah. It's very easy. It's almost an absolute statement. Whatever arises is not you. Yeah? So whenever it arises and says it's you, subtly by thinking, oh, I claim this incredible vision, it ain't you. That's claiming the incredible vision. It's the mental state, yes? And if you see that, the aperture will open up even wider. Yeah? And then the next time it arises, and when it arises, and if you believe it, that aperture gets locked in place there. Yeah? And then you usually revert back to the smaller apertures. But if you see that as not you, the aperture opens up wider. Doesn't, but we'll say it. That's like the growth. It doesn't, yes, but it feels like that, yeah? When it arises again to claim that it's the one that's seeing so clearly, you see that as not you, more. And after a while, if you watch it, its movement maybe 6 or 8 times, you can have one of those 100 monkey moments where you get it. You just realize, Jesus Christ, wherever I am, it's going to arise and say it's the one that's there. Yeah, that's all. So you catch it now instead of looking from it.
But who's that you? That
There isn't a you, there's just seeing. See, we're so self-centered, we have to believe that there's a you that's seeing. It's just seeing. It's just awareness, being aware. Yeah?
Today I was reading in the Course in Miracles that our function is forgiveness in this place. And I felt myself trying to forgive, but I recognized that when you forget about whatever issues you had, they're gone anyway. Like it all just happens automatically. So it feels like a conflict or tension between trying to be good and just being.
Yeah. Well, there's another place the Course goes, which is atonement, which is that nothing ever happened to forgive. So forgiveness is somewhat flawed, and then there's atonement, because they're seeing that there's nothing that ever happened that needs forgiving. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, so. I have faith in this message. Like we were talking about it today, I can't believe people have intensives. Isn't life intensive enough? I mean, fuck it, Jesus Christ, what do I need to go to an intensive? You know? And I don't believe you need retreats. If you like retreats, it's great. But you are that, you know? And I've watched it. I've shared this message. I haven't, thank God. Something else has moved through for many long times. And, you know, it's been verified. Entertain these possibilities, and usually one of the results will be traveling lighter. And after a while, you realize, what more do you want? That's what you've really been looking for. We've just been given names about it. Enlightenment. But look at what the mental state does with the term enlightenment when it claims it. It uses it to create agitation. People suffer in these sort of meetings because of enlightenment or not being enlightened, yeah? When the definition of enlightenment is cessation of all suffering, yet when the mental state claims it, it uses it to produce suffering. Or being awake. People would have been so much better off if they never had heard that about being awake. As if some event has to happen. Because now they try to reproduce the event someone talked about. Like, I woke up in Kmart, you know, in the appliance aisle at 11 o'clock on a Friday morning. So people go to Kmart on a Friday, have their friend push a toaster on their head. Hopefully they'll have the experience. It's insane. It would have been better if they never heard about fucking anything. You know, it was like my cat. My cat was super happy with dry food. But if you would introduce it to wet food, it would have a big fucking opinion about dry food. Much better off just letting him have dry food. He's happy as a lamb, you know, clam or whatever. But as soon as he, oh, wait a minute, fuck this. Yeah. I believe humbly we're all awake. Not people as, you know, individuals. We're, obviously, consciousness is a pretty good example of something. And it's not showing any effort or thought, so I would say it's being conscious. It's not doing consciousness. Doing consciousness would probably create some sweat, you know? But being conscious is pretty, flows easily because it's not doing it, you know, it's just being it. I mean, that's the base of all our lives. I don't see how we're not noticing that. And that we believe that thought and effort could get to that place which demonstrates no thought or effort. How could that possibly work? Yeah. We must have misconstrued being to be a goal of doing, yeah? But you can't do and have yourself into being. It's impossible. You just do and have yourself into more doing and having. The systems are great when they fail. There's a statement in the Course that says, what can a failed system show you? It can show you that it's failed. It's a failed system. That's what it shows you. Disillusionment is one of the greatest realizations of all. When that which you're relying on is completely shown to be unreliable, that's a pretty good moment, yeah? Because then all the clenching will let go and you'll realize they're wings, you know? You were busily using it to hold on to something instead of fucking fly on them. Usually books on flying. I got the books on flying. Drop the books and fly, whatever. Yeah, so you get the little, it's a little trick. The mental logic doesn't work. The mental logic, you can't make sense of what's happening here. If you put this message into the mental logic, you're gonna get a lot of doing and shit out of it. This doesn't follow the mental logic. Mind doesn't go that way. Mind is not going the way, what we call mind is the mental states. I don't even call it mind. It's mental processes. The mind ain't playing that game, yeah? And once you see it, then the wind blows, and in your little mental landscape, all the imaginary nouns get blown down, and it's just verbing. Just verbing, verbing, verbing. Verbing. Seeing never culminating into a seer. Hearing never culminating into a hearer. Yeah, never. Just seeing, seeing, seeing. Always. Yeah. That's it, I think. Yeah. Well, hey, we have some incredible shirts. That's what I'm really here to do, is sell shirts. I have more interest in selling shirts. Oh, all right. You can pass a basket. Did people pay? Yes. You gotta pay to see me, man. I'm fucking tired of giving it out for free. Well, pass it until they break down. I find that usually the fourth around, then they fucking bring out the big bills. They're like, oh, fuck it. I'm proud of these shirts, yes. Who has a shirt of the Wheel of Life? With the god of death, Yama, from Tibetan Buddhism, holding the Wheel of Life, which is a teaching aid. It describes what's happening in this place. And it has the 6 realms where you can find yourself here in the hell realm, the animal realm, the celestial being realm, and all like this. And where does the ignorance set in? It's described as an arrow in someone's eye. They're walking around not seeing fucking anything. And then this whole thing goes around and you get spit out and you go, oh yes. This is an action shirt, so yeah. So see the Yama there, right? And then always when they show Yama, they always have the Buddha in a more exalted place, so they got them both up here. So here's the god of death, but then there's Buddha up in the corner here, Buddha there, yeah? Yes. And then in the middle are 3 animals that represent malice, envy, and greed. Those are the 3 winds, the 3 mental winds that blow the wheel of life here. Malice, envy, and greed, yes? So when you see someone and you think they're greedy, they're just being a vehicle for greed, yeah? Greed is coming through a person. Because we got a bigger spectrum than animals, yeah? We can display a lot more shades, yes? Like compassion, beauty, love, cruelty, pain infliction, stuff like that. It's amazing what can come through us. Yeah. Wow, I'm tired now.
Put your now?
Yeah, punch it now.